endless English talking time. So what is my endless English talking time system? And why did I create it? So let's talk about that and look at the worksheet that I created for my presentation about this topic briefly. And then in the next video, we'll go through the worksheet in more detail. So the purpose of my EETT system is to increase students' English talking time by scaffolding my lesson plans and deconstructing conversations. All right, so let's look at why I created my system, what scaffolding is, how the system works, and how my presentation works. So why I created my endless English talking time system. So as language teachers, we want to increase the amount of student talking time, STT, and reduce the amount of teacher talking time, TTT. This can be challenging for teachers and students. A lot of students just rush through their conversations or have conversations in interview style or police interrogation fashion. Their conversations might be robotic or impersonal, and a lot of students might rely heavily on translation. And even if we are not using a lot of TTT, that doesn't mean that student talking time equals English talking time. And students' conversations are often short-lived and boring. So this situation is what led me to developing my endless English talking time system. And my students now, regardless of their level, can have lengthy, interesting, and meaningful conversations. So the problem isn't just a matter of their lacking target language knowledge and skills. Many of them, for various reasons, cultural, educational, personal, a lack of experience, training, interest, or confidence, etc., don't know how to carry on a conversation in English. So what needs to be done? Each lesson must be properly scaffolded so that the new input is limited and focused in order to reduce the learner's confusion, stress, and reliance on translation, and in order to enable them to engage in meaningful and functional output. And B, students need to be instructed as to how to have a structured and engaging real conversation. Okay, good. So what is scaffolding? Well, Jerome Bruner was an American psychologist who helped develop scaffolding for education. And he has 6 steps, which I've adapted for ELT purposes. So his 6 steps are: 1, recruitment; 2, reduction in degrees of freedom; 3, direction maintenance; 4, marking critical features; 5, frustration control; and 6, demonstration or modeling. And I've reworded those for ELT purposes to interest, simplification, focus, noticing, assisting, and demonstration, and then rearranged them based on my needs for lesson planning and lesson delivery. So 1 is simplification, which takes place during the lesson planning stage. And then during the lesson, we have interest at the beginning of the lesson and at the beginning of each activity. And then demonstration at the beginning of each activity. It can be a physical or oral or written demonstration or a combination thereof. And then throughout the lesson, focus, assisting, and noticing. those last three can be mixed up and used as needed. So the initials there are SID, FAN, SIDFAN. Another part of scaffolding is having clear objectives, communicative, language or linguistic, phonological or pronunciation, and context. So for this presentation, the communicative objective is for teachers to talk about how to help their students engage in lengthy, real conversations. And the language objective for demonstration purposes is to be able to use modals correctly in conversation. And the phonological objective for demonstration purposes is to be able to pronounce R correctly. And the context is a TEFL conference or an EFL workshop. So that's a little bit of information on scaffolding. Scaffolding is a much deeper and broader subject, which I can expand on in future videos. So my system, how does it work? Well, the students need to be guided in their conversation progress and process from controlled to freer to free practice. And we can use another TTT, test, teach, test, or test, teach, task, in which before teaching them the grammar or pronunciation or vocabulary input, we test them to see what they can do. Not an official test, not a written test, just a conversational test with their partners or between the teacher and the students, or both. And speed chatting, that's simply similar to speed dating, having people work in pairs or small groups, ideally pairs, for a few minutes. My students usually do it for 5 or 6 minutes. It could be anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes, depending on the student's level and the number of students in the class. And after each round, they change partners and repeat the process, new partners, new conversations. In between rounds, you, the teacher, can give them feedback or go over the grammar or pronunciation or whatever. And eventually, for example, if they do 5 or 6 rounds, maybe after the second or third, they should be told not to read their worksheet or whatever they're reading. And then the deconstruction process, which we'll look at on the worksheet briefly now and in more detail in the next video. It's not an exact science, but students need to have some direction as to how to have a conversation. So I've broken the basics of a decent conversation down into a few items which can be used to build conversation skills. And I think one thing that people forget is that language skills come through use, through conversation, and reading and writing and listening. What I mean is, it's not a matter of studying grammar to be able to have a good conversation. It's a matter of practicing conversation in order to develop good language skills and knowledge. And my system also helps students have less stressful and more successful speaking tests. And this is just the basic level of my EETT system. There are more advanced levels. And the presentation, which is designed for teachers, obviously, is presented in a lesson delivery format, with the teachers playing the role of language learners, but with the input being information for teachers. Okay. So here's a quick look at the worksheet. This is what my worksheets for my students look like. Warm up, vocabulary input, practice dialogue, pronunciation, example conversation, questions. They're told to have a real conversation, not an interview, not an interrogation, and not something between robots. And here's the system. Follow-up questions, who, what, when, where, how, and why. Switch questions, how about you? What about you and you? Extra questions. And it should look like this. Topic question, follow-up questions, switch question, follow-up questions, new topic question, etc. And they need to have a real conversation and not read at some point. Be interested in their partner and ask lots of follow-up questions, not finish or stop, and speak in complete sentences. And then there's the grammar input, which we do after the second or third round normally of speed chatting. Okay, and then their homework. They do some writing to further develop their language skills. And we'll look at this in more detail in the next video. All right, thank you. And have a good day.